So, I have a PhD now. I genuinely didn't think I would make it. Hi, my name is Andre. I'm a doctor in philology, which feels really strange still to say out loud. I'm just making this video to, first of all, welcome you into the channel and into my life, and just to tell you the full story of how I got here, because it's not really the story that you would expect normally. Because this didn't really start with a passion for academia. It didn't start with some grand ambition. It it started in the summer of 2022. I had just finished my master's. I was 24 years old, and my father had just died of pancreatic cancer. And that is how my PhD begins. My coordinator, I'll talk more about him because he generally changed my life. He told me something at the very start, literally weeks after my father had passed. Um, he told me that now is actually the best time to start. It will take your mind off of things. And well, I thought about it, and I said, okay, that was my reason. Not academia, not some burning desire to contribute to scholarship. I needed somewhere to put all of that grief, all of that energy into something. I needed to work hard so that I didn't fall apart. And here's the thing about my father. The reason I'm even in humanities in the first place, the reason I study stories and literature and language and all that, that's him. He was the one who put books in my hands, and he was the one that nurtured that in me when I was a child. So in a way, doing this PhD was also a way to carry him forward. Even if I didn't truly see it, or I guess fully see it at the time. So I signed up to the program, and the proposal, all that, right? And eventually the entry interview came around. I remember walking in and seeing the other candidates, and all I can really remember is just notes, stacks of notes, printed papers, binders, preparation materials, presentations on top of presentations, preparation on top of preparation, right? Now looking back at it, I guess it's fairly normal. I mean, it's reasonable, right? You don't really sign up for I don't know, a singing contest or whatever. But yeah, I had nothing. I hadn't brought in a single sheet of paper. I already knew what I wanted my research to be, and I kind of already knew what I wanted to talk about. I gave the main ideas. My proposal had been submitted months before, so I just walked into that interview room. I sat down and I just started talking. I started talking about Cathy Carrot's unclaimed experiences and Lacan's ethical dimensions between working through and acting out, Freud, Lacan, Deleuze, Derrida, all that. The idea that memory and denial shouldn't be studied in isolation but be put in dialogue with each other, and that trauma narratives shouldn't fixate only on the victim, it should fixate on the perpetrator too. I wasn't even looking at the commission. I just stared into the middle distance and talked. I was completely in the zone, I guess. I think it was something else, because I didn't really feel. Oh, hello, you woke up? Anyway, I didn't really feel confident, right? I just felt dread. I think that was just my coping mechanism. And honestly, I can barely remember the specifics of that interview or the questions that they asked me after. Like, I can't remember. Even to this day, I don't really remember what happened or what I actually said. But that day, I remember that I went home, and yeah, like, again, I had no idea what just happened. And to be fair, I already had like a backup plan, because I always kept telling myself, there's always next year, and it's fine, doesn't really matter, and all that. And that evening, my coordinator called me, and he said, congratulations, Andre, not only you are admitted to the program, you entered first, You won't need to pay tuition. You will receive a doctoral scholarship for the whole duration of the PhD program, 3 years, provided you do your best. I was speechless. I cringe about it to this day because all I could say during that moment was, yeah, thanks. And I just hang up. It was bad. During the 3 years of the program, I was diligent. I would say that. I did the work. I was not really a procrastinator in that sense. The only thing was that every single year when the annual reports came around and I felt the exact same way I felt during that interview at the beginning, that I'm not good enough, that this year is the year I lose the scholarship, this is the year they're gonna find out whatever they're gonna fucking find out. It was bad. And every annual presentation was the same. Me in class, me in a chair, scrolling through slides, staring at nothing, and talking on autopilot. I just showed up, I delivered, and I felt nothing but fear. One thing that I actually genuinely regret, and I'll be honest about this, was the networking aspect of the PhD journey, the PhD program, or I guess the complete absence of it, because my social anxiety made it basically impossible for me to connect with any other of the PhD students in my cohort. I didn't speak to a single one of them. Not one, right? I had one friend in the program who, well, we were friends previous to this. We were colleagues as well during our undergraduate and master's years. Really good friends, generally one of my best friends in the world, and we joined that same year. But I think after 2 years he quit, and God, I wanted to quit too, because I genuinely felt alone, because before this we would actually just start complaining to each other. Oh my God, this is so hard. We complained and obviously bitched and moaned and stuff like that. But this time I actually felt alone. I genuinely wanted to quit. So many times I kept telling myself that I didn't deserve to be here, that I was not cut out for this, that sooner or later the whole thing would collapse. But every time there was someone, there to guide me onto the right path, I guess. Because every single time I was close to walk away, there was my coordinator, my mother, my family, my friends, my professors, and they all said the same thing. It would be such a shame for you to quit. You're really good. Don't do this, And honestly, I kind of kept going for them, because now there was another fear on top of the extra fears that I had. Now I was afraid to disappoint them. Yeah, so I just kept going, because I was afraid that I would end up disappointing my friends, my family, my professors, my coordinator, And I just kept going. And funnily, and I guess ironically enough, my thesis is called Mixing Memory and Denial, Coping with Trauma in DeLillo, Karan, Mahajan, and Arundhati Roy. Briefly, I'll just talk about the core argument of the thesis, I guess. It's pretty much exactly what I pitched in that interview room. That memory and denial are, two sides of the same psychological coin. And that they need to be talked together rather than in isolation and all that. And how literature is one of the best ways to cope with trauma, be it individual or collective, and all that stuff. 3 years of work, 3 authors, and one argument that I actually genuinely believed in. And after that it was time for me to defend my thesis. I had defended my thesis on February 14, 2026. Yes, exactly on Valentine's Day. I remember I walked into the room with 2 of my best friends. One of them was actually the guy that I just mentioned, the one who, we joined at the same time. We joined the program at the same time. And, they helped me set up the laptop, open the presentation, all of that, And then the head of the board gave her opening remarks, and then it was my turn, right? And something was different this time. I looked at people for the first time in years of presentations, of articles, of conferences, interviews, reports, all that. I actually looked at the members of the board. I engaged with the members of the audience. When they asked questions afterward, I answered them properly, thoroughly. I was not on autopilot anymore. I was actually present. Was I scared? Yes, of course, absolutely. But it was also fun. I had fun because in that room, for that specific topic, I was the expert. Nobody in that room knew the material the way I did. I had spent 3 years with that thesis and with those ideas in mind. And that moment, I actually understood that I was not just defending my thesis. I was just explaining I was explaining the members of the audience and the board what I have discovered. And knowing that, knowing the fact that I held all the cards, that felt really good. One moment from the defense that I keep coming back to was that at some point during my defense, I was, talking, but I remember one member of the board leaning over to my coordinator and whisper something. And somehow, I don't know how I got that and caught that, but she said, "Oh, wow, he's just like you." Like, what? I didn't fully understand what she meant until I watched the footage my friend filmed. And there it was. The way I moved my hands, the way I paced, the way I talked. It was my coordinator 101, completely unconscious. I had absorbed his way of presenting. I guess over years of working together and seeing that on film was, one of the most surreal things that I have ever experienced. And the defense itself, or after the defense itself, before the board went to deliberate, my coordinator said something in front of everyone, in front of the board, in front of the audience, that meant more to me than any title or grade ever could. He said that I had not just defended my thesis, I had given him ideas for his own future research. Yeah, that's the one, man. Yeah, that's the moment. As far as the result, the board asked me and the members of the audience to leave the room. We waited outside, my friends were right behind me. Then they called us back in after 5 minutes or something like that. I sat in the middle of the room, obviously, and the board said, "We are honored to grant Andrei Zamfir the title of Doctor in Philology, magna cum laude." The room erupted, applauses, stuff like that. My friends hugged me, my coordinator hugged me. All of them said that they were proud of me, and the usual tears in the eyes and all that. But I just wanted to make this video to tell whoever is watching this that even though something starts from loss, you'll eventually gain something much more than what you had lost. This journey, my specific journey, started from loss. It was, a result of grief that I didn't know how to process and I didn't know how to cope with. And from a conversation I had with my coordinator in the worst summer of my life, I just pitched an idea and that was it. And somewhere along the way, through the self-doubt, through the panic, through the autopilot presentations, and the desperate urge to quit, I became someone who walked into a room full of experts and felt comfortable. My father put books in my hands and I turned those books into a doctorate, and I think he would have really liked that. Anyway, that's the story. That's the beginning, middle, and the end of my PhD. If you want to follow what comes next, click the buttons. I'll probably make a next video, a follow-up video of how I actually celebrated my PhD graduation and all that. And thank you for watching this. I guess, really personal, raw, emotional video. It was definitely emotionally charged. So yeah, thank you for being here, and yeah, I'll see you around. All right. You slept through all that.